The distress beacon pierced through subspace like a dying scream, its quantum-encoded message cascading across 17 star systems in mere minutes. The Kixari Coalition, a peaceful federation of herbivorous species spanning 43 worlds, had finally broken their sacred principle of non-interference. They were dying and they needed help. The message was simple: coordinates, casualties in the billions, and a single word that translated across all known linguistic matrices: please. What the Kixari didn't know was that their beacon, hastily programmed by scientists who had never designed military equipment, had been calibrated to the wrong frequency range. Instead of reaching the Velthrian peacekeepers, gentle giants who mediated conflicts through patience and philosophy, it punched through directly into the communication arrays of Solsystem.Earth. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNS Indomitable, watching the holographic display flicker to life. Around her, 300 human warships materialized from faster-than-light transit, their angular hulls bristling with weapons that made the void itself seem to recoil. "Ma'am, we're receiving confused transmissions from the surface," Lieutenant Park reported, his fingers dancing across haptic interfaces. "They're asking why the Deathworlders have arrived." Chen allowed herself a thin smile. 6 months ago, humanity had made first contact. The galactic community's reaction had been memorable. When they learned humans evolved on a planet with 1G gravity, active tectonics, extreme weather, and an oxygen-rich atmosphere that could literally corrode metal, the aliens had classified Earth as a Class 12 death world. Only 3 other planets in the known galaxy held that designation, and all were considered uninhabitable nightmares. The fact that humans had not only survived but thrived there, developing complex societies, art, and eventually spaceflight, had terrified the gentle species of the stars. Humanity's application to join the Galactic Council was still pending review, a polite way of saying quarantined. "Hail the surface," Chen ordered. "Let them know the cavalry has arrived." On Kixar Prime, Administrator Velix's 4 eye stalks trembled as the human fleet descended through the ash-choked atmosphere. Below, the Kragath swarm continued its relentless advance, their chitinous bodies glinting like oil slicks as they devoured everything in their path. Entire cities had been consumed in days. "Administrator, the humans are requesting landing coordinates for their Marines," his aide whispered, the translator struggling with the unfamiliar term. "Marines?" Velix's vocal sac fluttered nervously. What manner of specialists are these? Before anyone could answer, the first drop pods began their descent. 2,000 titanium coffins screaming through the sky at terminal velocity, atmospheric friction turning them into meteors. They impacted the planet's surface with seismic force, each one disgorging 6 armored humans who immediately began engaging the Kragath swarm. Velix watched the tactical display in stunned silence. The humans didn't retreat. They didn't call for support or establish defensive perimeters. They advanced, moving through the Kragath swarm like threshers through grain. "Impossible," breathed his military advisor, a Kixari who had spent 40 years studying warfare without ever experiencing it. "Their biology. They're operating in atmospheric conditions that would incapacitate our soldiers. The toxins the Kragath release are primarily sulfur-based compounds," Captain Chen's voice interrupted over the open channel. She'd been monitoring their transmissions. "Our people evolved breathing oxygen, one of the most corrosive substances in the universe. A little H2S isn't going to slow us down. In fact, it reminds some of our boys of home. There's a city on Earth called Los Angeles." On the ground, Sergeant Marcus Webb grinned inside his helmet, as his tactical display highlighted 300 Kragath warriors converging on his position. Back on Earth, he'd been a search and rescue specialist, pulling people from collapsed buildings after earthquakes. The Kragath were tough, certainly. Their exoskeletons could deflect most energy weapons the Kixari possessed. But humanity hadn't built energy weapons. They'd built railguns. Webb's rifle barked, and a tungsten round traveling at Mach 7 punched through a Kragath warrior, and the one behind it, and the wall behind that. "Remember your training," he shouted to his squad. "These bugs are invasive species." "We're pest control." The battle lasted 6 hours. By the time the last Kragath hive ship attempted to flee the system, the human fleet had already positioned interceptors at every jump point. There would be no survivors to spread word of this world's location. 3 days later, Administrator Velik stood in what remained of his capital city's central plaza, watching human engineers operate massive machines that simultaneously terrified and amazed him. They were rebuilding, restructuring, and removing Kragath biomass with an efficiency that spoke of grim experience. Captain Chen materialized beside him, having transported down from orbit. Without her armor, she looked almost fragile. Bipedal, no natural weapons, covered in thin skin that seemed impossibly vulnerable. Why? Velix asked simply. Your kind was not welcomed into our civilization. We feared you, yet you came when we called, even though the message was meant for others. Chen gazed at the sunset, her expression unreadable. Where I come from, Admiral, there's an old saying, no one gets left behind. You called for help. Doesn't matter if you meant to call us or not. Doesn't matter if you're afraid of us. She turned to face him, and Velik saw something in her eyes that the translator couldn't quantify, something old and fierce and protective. We're Deathworlders, Administrator. We evolved in hell, fought our way to the stars, and learned one truth that defines us. The strong protect the weak. Not because it's easy, because it's right. She extended her hand. A human gesture Velix had learned meant greeting or agreement. His tentacle wrapped around it carefully. Your application to the Galactic Council, he said quietly. I will personally advocate for its immediate approval, and I suspect 42 other worlds will do the same. Chen smiled. Appreciated. But we didn't come here for political favors, Administrator. We came because someone needed help. She glanced back at her Marines, who were now distributing supplies to Kiksari civilians, their weapons slung but ready. That's what we do. As the first stars emerged in Kiksar's evening sky, Velix understood something the rest of the galaxy would soon learn. Humanity hadn't become apex predators by being the strongest or the fastest. They'd done it by being the most stubborn, the most adaptable, and perhaps most terrifying of all, by choosing compassion even when fear would have been easier. The Kiksari had sent their SOS to the wrong species, but somehow they'd reached exactly the right one.